Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Growth and Thriving Morning Mindset. I'm your host, Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, the Biker Psychologist. Today, I want to give you a couple of tips if you are thinking about trying to improve your health and get into sort of an exercise routine to maybe improve your longevity and your overall well being. And what I want to do is talk to you about what priorities should look like if you are trying to improve your health, but you don't necessarily have a fitness goal. You're not training for a 5K or a marathon. You're not necessarily concerned about having six pack abs or that sort of thing, but you just want to stay healthy and age in a very healthy way. So, the way I would have you think about this, and of course, it can get way more complex than this. You can get deep in the weeds with all of it. But the way I'd have you think about it is like this: a healthy heart and lungs will keep you alive longer. Muscle on your frame and strength, which they kind of go together, but more muscle on your frame will make sure you enjoy all of those years, that you are not feeble or weak or with low bone density or anything like that. So, the way I would set up my fitness program is I would concern myself when I'm thinking about my heart and lungs. I would think about like an 85-15 split. 85% of the cardio work I do should be in zone 2. What is zone 2? Well, zone 2 is working at a certain percentage of your resting heart rate. And again, we can get very in the weeds, but we don't need to. There are ways to get very exact and precise about your heart rate zones. You can measure zone 2 or any zone, I guess, based on the amount of lactic acid that you produce. So at zone 2, you should be producing a certain amount or below a certain amount of lactic acid. But in order to measure that, you have to be able to prick your finger periodically and take little blood samples that measure lactic acid while you're exercising. Most people can't do that. The second way to determine where your heart rate zones are and what zone 2 looks like would be to get a metabolic test. Some fitness centers and gyms have these available for a small fee. You basically would wear a mask and do some walking or running on a treadmill or stair climbing, and the mask will measure the gases you're exhaling and determine what percentage of energy you're burning from fat and what percentage you're burning from carbohydrates, and it will determine your heart rate zones for you. That's a great way, in fact, a great thing to do. The American Heart Association recommends that people have their VO2 max, which is part of that assessment, tested annually. But if you don't have access to that or you don't want to spend the money on it, you can reasonably estimate what zone 2 cardio looks like. And zone 2 is slightly higher than resting. So it's slightly elevated heart rate, similar to like a brisk walk or a hike, a comfortable bike ride. Basically, when you're in zone 2, your heart rate will be elevated and you may be perspiring or sweating a little bit, but you should be able to carry on a conversation comfortably. You should not, in the middle of your conversation, have to stop and take a breath like that. You should be able to speak just like I'm speaking now. That's number 1. Number 2, you should be able to breathe in and out through your nose, of course, barring congestion or sinus issues, but generally speaking, you should be able to breathe in and out through your nose comfortably in zone 2. If you find that you have to kind of inhale through your mouth, you've probably gotten into zone 3. Last but not least, when you're in zone 2, you should feel like there's some effort, but like you could continue for hours. Like you won't run out of steam for a very long time. So, for example, when I do zone 2, sometimes I take my dogs for a walk. I live in a hilly neighborhood, and I'll throw on a weight vest during the walk, and that will keep my heart rate in around zone 2. So that should be about 85% of your heart rate work. The gold standard, if you will, is 3 hours a week of that. So if you did, a 30-minute walk 6 days a week, that would cover it. You could do a couple of 45-minute sessions. You could go to the gym and do it there, but you don't have to. The other 15% should be higher intensity. So running or cycling or something at a very high intensity for just a few seconds, 20 to 45 seconds. Get your heart rate up as high as you possibly can. Then allow it to come down for 60 to 90 seconds. Then go real hard again and get it up as high as you can. And when that heart rate gets up, you should feel very uncomfortable, like you cannot continue. And that's when you drop it down and you recover. If you do, 6 to 10 rounds of that, it should take you 15 to 20 minutes once a week. And the whole round takes you 15 to 20 minutes. Really, it's probably only about 10 to 12 minutes of actual work. If you think about those high intensity intervals being 30 seconds or so, and you do, let's say, 8 of them, right? That's 4 minutes of actual work. So that's your heart rate work. And each week you should plan to do a whole lot of low level kind of walking, brisk walking, low level cycling, and then maybe once a week you do some higher intensity work. The second priority is keeping muscle on your frame. Plain and simple, this is done by lifting heavy things. Could you do this with machines at the gym? Sure. That's probably not the best approach for functional strength, for strength that you can use to pick up your kids or grandkids or ride a motorcycle like I do, or just fix things around your house, get up and down off the floor. If you want functional strength, you should probably stay with traditional kinds of lifts using barbells, dumbbells, and even body weight. So things like bench press, push-ups, squats. If you can't squat a bar on your shoulders, you can do goblet squats with a dumbbell or a kettlebell. Lunges, squats, deadlifts. Pulling is a little bit harder because the way to pull your body weight would be to do pull-ups. If you can do them, great. If you can't, relatively heavy lat pull downs and seated rows or dumbbell rows are a great way to keep muscle. Can you do bicep and tricep work? Sure, you can. But your biceps and triceps will get worked when you're pushing and pulling. So you don't need to focus on them specifically a whole lot unless you're trying to develop them specifically. But if you keep a lot of muscle on your frame and you keep your heart and lungs healthy, your risk of all-cause mortality plummets. You will likely live much, much longer and much, much happier. One last thing, well, what about losing weight or burning fat? First off, you don't need to worry about your weight. I've written articles about this. I can put a link to one of those articles on this email. I've also, and I'll put a link on the video as well, but I've also done other videos of 3 reasons why you shouldn't really worry about your weight, especially if you're building muscle. If you're building muscle, you're going to get heavier. You're not going to lose weight. But what about burning fat? So 2 things I will tell you about that. First is optimal health. The best you can do, optimal, comes from having your body fat in a healthy range. So for men, we're talking about 8 or 10% up to about 20% being the top range. For women, it's about 15% up to 30%. Somewhere in the middle of those ranges is great. And if you could be in that healthy body fat range and pack muscle on, that's optimal. That's the best you can do. But if we have the choice of losing fat or building muscle will give you more benefit, even if you're carrying a little extra body fat. It's the truth. The other thing I will let you know is that body fat, losing anything, gaining, has to do with eating calories and lifting real heavy. Real heavy for you, right? It's different for person to person. But losing fat, losing weight has much more to do with how you eat. And what types of foods you eat and don't eat, and how much you eat and don't eat. So that is less about building about your fitness program. What I will say, though, as it pertains to fitness, is the more muscle you build, the faster your metabolism. The faster your metabolism, the easier it is to burn fat. So they are related. But again, the best you can do in very simple, basic terms is keep your heart and lungs healthy, keep as much muscle on your frame as you can. That will pay huge dividends. If you have questions, you want more information, more specifics, hit me up, message me. I'd be happy to help you out more with that. Until next time, I'm Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, the Biker Psychologist, saying keep growing until you're thriving, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.